On this edition with Read with Ronald, I read the rest of the God Don't Like Ugly series, which is God Ain't Blind, God Ain't Through Yet, and God Don't Make No Mistakes. Post-production Ronald here. This video was originally supposed to be all 3 books in one video, but what had happened was I got done editing it. When I finished editing it, the final length was 3 hours long. So instead of giving y'all one 3-hour long video, I decided to give y'all 3 1-hour long videos. Each book is gonna get its own video, but as you're watching, just keep in mind that this was all supposed to originally be one video. Honestly, I had no plans on finishing this series. After I read the sample chapter for God Ain't Blind, I was like, I don't want to read this because it's gonna be a rehash of God Don't Play. Somewhere along the line about April, I was like, I kind of want to finish the series just to see like what else is gonna happen, because I felt like the series was starting to fall off, but I decided to go ahead and give it a chance and see how the rest of the series would go. I suggest that you go watch the first 3 videos on the first 3 books so you can get the full understanding of what's going on in the series. So let's get into the rest of this series. So today is June 17th. It is 2 in the morning and I am reading God Don't Make No Mistakes. It's the last book in the God Don't Like Ugly series. And I'm not even gonna lie, this is a little bittersweet. I've enjoyed reading the series. It's been a fun ride, I've enjoyed the characters. It's a little bittersweet to me to know that this is the last book featuring them and they're possibly never gonna show up again. But while it is bittersweet, this book might potentially take God Still Don't Like Ugly's place as the worst book in the series. We started off with the prologue, right? And the prologue is this news article about this lady. Basically, she was like the head of this international ring that was distributing videos of children being abused and molested on camera. And Annette is shocked because this is one of her friends that she's left Charlotte with, right? The actual story starts off with Pee-wee and Annette sleeping together. Pee-wee slaps down some money for like taking care of Charlotte, but Annette doesn't like the way that he does it because she says he makes her feel like a prostitute because they're still married, but they're separated, so they're dating around but sleeping together. They're in a situationship, but they're married. He jokes and says, well, prostitutes need love too. Annette tells him off, and then she tells him to stop having Lizzie call her out. And so Pee-wee, he gets all flustered about this and he runs off, right? So right after he runs off, Lizzie calls. He's been trying to get in contact with Pee-wee, but he's avoiding her. And so Annette is like, quit calling my house. Lizzie like, I gotta tell him something important. Put him on the phone. I know he's over there because I rode past and saw his car. So put him on the phone. And if you don't talk to me today, I'm getting my attorney involved. And Annette's like, what you need an attorney for? So they get into it some more. And basically Lizzie reveals that she's pregnant. And when she says this, I'm like, Lizzie is pregnant, but she's 47. It's possible, but it's uncommon for a woman in her late 40s to be having a baby. Let's be real. Annette, of course, do what she do. She calls Rhoda, and Rhoda says what I said. Annette is not trying to hear it, as usual. Pee-wee cheating on me with another woman is one thing, but having a baby with another woman, that's like a deal breaker for her. And so she's like, if this baby is his, she's getting a divorce and it's over. And Rhoda tells her not to be too hasty because this could be a blessing. And that's like, Rhoda, what are you talking about? And Rhoda's like, this could be a blessing because think about it. Your dad cheated on your mom and had Lily Mae and your other siblings, and you have a super close relationship with Lily Mae. Charlotte could have the same thing. And if you could move on from what your dad did, and if Gussie Mae could move on from what your dad did, then why can't you accept it from Pee-wee? And Annette, she knows Rhoda is right, but she's not trying to hear it, so she making excuses. And Annette asked Rhoda what she would have done about Otis's other woman if Otis's other woman had been pregnant. Otis cheated on Rhoda early in the marriage, and Rhoda went and beat that lady down. Cheating with Bobby, had a whole affair baby with Bobby, and Bobby's actually on the way. As they speak, he on the way to the house. And so Rhoda's like, I don't know what I would have did about that lady, but I've made some mistakes in my life, but I can't say that I don't regret anything. Just like Gussie Mae told me she don't regret anything because that baby was a blessing to me. And so Gussie Mae says she don't regret anything that's happened to her because it made her into who she was today. The successful woman who's overcome a whole bunch of hardships in her life. And I'm like, you know what? Good for Gussie Mae. She worked my nerves throughout the series, but honestly, good for her. I'm happy for her. And so then after they get done talking, Pee-wee calls. He's talking to her. He's sorry for how he treated her earlier and the jokes that he made, and he's telling her all these sweet things. But Annette keeps dropping hints because she's pissed off, and Pee-wee's like, okay, obviously something's wrong. Annette basically tells him that Lizzie's having his baby. And so then she goes and calls Rhoda back, And her and Rhoda talk some more. They decide they want to meet up and stuff like that, but they can't because Jade is going through it because Vernie has divorced her, and now she has a UTI because Charlotte pulled a prank on her and gave her some cheap bubble bath in an expensive bottle. Jade was soaking in that mess for hours, and so now she got a UTI. She driving Rhoda crazy, but she's still going out clubbing and stuff like that. And so they decide to coordinate getting together, but they can't coordinate a time. And so then Annette realizes she has a date, and she's like, "Oh no, girl, never mind. I have a date." And that's where I left off. And I'm just like, this might end up being the worst book in the series. It might take God Still Don't Like Ugly's place because we supposed to be wrapping it up, but we introducing new characters, we introducing new possibilities, new plot lines, and we haven't even got to what the prologue was about yet. This opening to the book was really not all that gripping. Like the opening to God Ain't Through Yet, that had me like immediately. It had me immediately. I was interested. I was like, what is going on? What did I come in on? This book, I'm like, oh my goodness. I'm like, why? Why? Why is this what's going on? So Annette, she of course has her date, but before she can go on her date, she gets a call from Lizelle and Ryrita. News about Lizzie's pregnancy has spread all over town. So they call to, check on her and comfort her and also be nosy. And they basically telling her, oh girl, it'll be all right. And Ryrita's like, I've been through this before and it hurts at first, but before you know it, the baby will be just like family. You'll love it just like it's one of your own kids. And so Annette is like, how did you get through this, Rita? And she was like, well, I was pissed off. But I couldn't stay mad forever. I had to get on with my life. And so Annette, she's listening, but she's not really trying to hear it because she's still hurt. And so then after she gets off the phone with them, here come Gussie Mae calling. She tells Annette that the news has been spreading all over town because of Claudette's shop. All the women are in there spreading the gossip around. So that's how she heard about it. And so she calls Annette fussing and blaming Annette, talking about somehow could you let this white woman steal your man and have a baby with him and da 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 this and da 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 that. And Annette puts her in her place for her hypocrisy because she's like, ma'am, you did the same thing. And Gussie Mae, of course, she trying to, walk it back, backpedal, be like, oh, well, that was different, but it's not different. And she basically tells Annette, I raised you differently. I hoped you wouldn't go through the same things I went through. And that's why I worked so hard for us to get this house. It took a lot to get that house. Don't you let the house fall in Pee Wee's hands so that white woman can be up in there raising her baby in a house that I worked hard and left to you. Don't give Pee Wee nothing because I ain't leaving Frank nothing. And I will never accept none of his kids outside of you. After Gussie Mae says that, a few hours later, one of my favorite characters shows up on Annette's doorstep. It's Lily Mae. She left her husband in a hurry, so she's a little drunk, but she shows up and she needs a place to stay for the time being, and Annette lets her stay. She knows everything that's gone on with Annette because Annette tells her everything. Annette tells her, like, the latest development with Lizzie, and she's like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. I'm glad I'm here to support you. Lily Mae being Lily Mae, she's like, well, girl, I know you got a date because you told me you got company, so go ahead and go on your date. I'll be here. I ain't going nowhere. So Annette goes on her date. It's with this guy named Roscoe. She's dating around multiple guys, but Roscoe is the one that she likes the most. So she goes on this date with Roscoe. Roscoe, he hits it off well with Lily Mae. He's just very impulsive and very talkative. And Annette is like, she's used to it from him, so she doesn't really mind. And so he impulsively cancels their dinner reservations and takes her to his house instead. And he tells her, oh, we're not going to sleep together. And she's not surprised with this because they barely have slept together because he does not like sleeping with other people because of some traumatic experiences that took place in his childhood because his stepfather tried to break him in, getting him to lose his virginity to a prostitute, and the prostitute laughed at him. And so that traumatized him. And then he had some other experiences with other girls who also laughed at him for his poor performance, and it traumatized him, so he doesn't like sleeping with other people. And so Roscoe, he lives in this big house out on the edge of town. He's recently widowed. So he takes Annette over there and he tells her, I know that you and Pee Wee are going through it, and I'm not going to lie, I'm glad he got Lizzie pregnant because if you decide to divorce him, I want to marry you. And Annette's like, no. Roscoe was praising Annette and Gussie Mae for being like low maintenance women who don't require too much. They roll with the punches, they're forgiving and stuff like that. And Annette is bothered by that because she does not want to be like Gussie Mae. Roscoe takes her back home at her request. She gets home, Gussie Mae is there. She walk in the house, Gussie Mae is fussing, and so Annette thinks she's fussing because she went on a date. But no, Gussie Mae is fussing because Lily Mae is there. Annette is like, well, Lily Mae is my sister. She left her husband and she needed a place to stay. And Gussie Mae's like she didn't have nowhere else she could go, and Annette's like, no. Gussie Mae, she gets to fussing because she doesn't really like Lily Mae. She thinks Lily Mae is there for some ulterior motive. But Annette's like, no, she's here because she left her husband, put his hands on her. But Annette suspects that it's more to it than that. She feels like that was just the straw that broke the camel's back. Because if you remember, and God Still Don't Like Ugly, Lily Mae has left her husband several times. And she's even had multiple affairs on him. So this is not like the first time that she's left him. This is not the first time that they've gotten into it. She's left him several times and then she's always gone back. Gussie Mae gets to fussing. And Annette's like, Lily Mae is somebody I can lean on for support during this hard time. And Gussie Mae's like, you don't need her. You got me and Scary Mary. And I'm like, child. Annette says what I thought. I'm like, you and Scary Mary are the last people I would want to lean on for support. Y'all blame Annette like it's her fault that what's happened has happened. And to be quite honest, the only time that she deserved the blame was when she had the affair. Every other time it was not her fault. So I'm not surprised that she don't want to be turning to y'all, because y'all have proven time and time again that y'all are not good people to lean on for support. And so Lily Mae plans on staying for a few months. Gussie Mae's pissed off about that. Pee Wee confirms that Lizzie is pregnant, and he's coming over the next day to talk about it. And that's where I left off. It's about 4:30 in the morning. So Annette is heartbroken and she forgets that Gussie Mae is there. So Gussie Mae is like, well, who are you on the phone with? And Annette's like, it's nobody, and basically tells her to mind her business. And Gussie Mae, she gets upset. She's like, oh, if you need me, I'm here. But if you don't want me to know, then I'll go. And Gussie Mae says she hopes that the baby is not the boy that Pee Wee's always wanted, which makes Annette even more upset. She wanted more than one child. So it upsets her that Lizzie is pregnant with possibly Pee Wee's baby while she is not. Annette politely puts Gussie Mae in her place and puts her out. And so Annette chooses to be compassionate to the child because it's an innocent baby and she doesn't want to be bitter like Gussie Mae was. Annette decides to be compassionate and she goes to bed, but she can't sleep. So when she wakes up in the morning, Lily Mae has cooked breakfast and Frank and Charlotte have come over to visit because Frank wanted to see Lily Mae. Annette suspects that Lily Mae is his favorite, but she's not bothered by it because Lily Mae is the child he spent the most of his time with, so it doesn't surprise her that she is possibly his favorite. And so Charlotte comforts her. She's like, oh, Mom, it's okay. You're just a miserable old woman. And Annette feels like a miserable old woman because Frank tells her that she's not looking too good. So she runs upstairs and isolates herself in her room and she realizes that she does not look good. Annette does not want to get up out the bed, but she eventually decides that she has to. And so she decides to go meet Rhoda at her house because she just needs to get away. And Rhoda's like, yeah, that's perfect because I need a break too from Bobby. And then she calls Pee Wee and tells Pee Wee to meet her at a cafe. And Pee Wee's like, I need to see you for a few hours because everything I need to say is going to take some hours to say. And that's like everything I got to say going to take some minutes. And, they get to arguing over the baby and the situation. And it's like, nothing will be the same between us. And honestly, Pee Wee, I can't trust you no more. So she decides that she's going to file for a divorce. And Pee Wee's like, well, if it's my baby, I'm going to do right by it, amend my will so that it gets something and stuff like that. And Annette, of course, she's annoyed by this, but she knows that it's the right thing to do. So she's like, handle your business, Pee Wee. So then Annette decides to reschedule her plans with Rhoda. And over the weekend, her family is just in and out, checking on her. Over the week, Pee Wee's trying to get in contact with her, but she's not picking up. Then the next weekend, her parents show up with Scary Mary. And Scary Mary tells her that she just needs to go ahead and kick Pee Wee to the curb and run him for all his money in the divorce. But Annette, she's secretly hoping that she can still work things out with Pee Wee, but she doesn't really know what she wants to do. And so then Gussie Mae is throwing all this shade at Lily Mae, but Lily Mae is not bothered by it. She's like, whatever, it is what it is. And so Annette, she gets annoyed. So she goes upstairs. She calls Rhoda. She's like, girl, I need to get up out this house. And Rhoda's like, come over. So Annette sneaks out the house and leaves Lily Mae with the wolves. So she goes over to Rhoda's. Her and Rhoda talk. And Annette does not know what she wants to do. She don't know. But she does hope that she does not become bitter like Gussie Mae, because she doesn't want to be that type of person. Annette, she notices that Rhoda's house is really quiet. Everybody's like out and away and stuff, except for Jade, who's upstairs asleep. So they talk, and then Annette decides to leave. So she leaves, but she forgot her keys. So she runs back in the house and she uses the bathroom. And when she comes out the bathroom, she hears Jade in the kitchen, flirting with somebody, and she's flirting with Bobby. Bobby is clearly uncomfortable. He's like, no, this is not what I want. Get away from me. But Jada is not trying to hear it. And so Rhoda comes down the hallway and Jade hears her and she's like, oh my gosh, get off of me. Mom, Uncle Bobby was trying to take advantage of me. And so Annette, she clears out the house real quick because she don't want to hear what's about to go down. So she takes the long way home. When she gets home, Charlotte comes in with this Harrietta lady. Charlotte was supposed to be out shopping with Gussie Mae, but Charlotte came back home because Gussie Mae was being old and cranky and Charlotte was annoyed, so she came home, but nobody was home. Harrietta decided to watch her until somebody got back home. Rhoda calls her and she's like, girl, you're not gonna believe what happened over here. They talk about it. And Annette changes the subject to Pee Wee because Rhoda is obviously very hurt about what went on. And so then after they talk about Pee Wee, they go back to what went on with Bobby and Jade. And Annette's like, you don't know what actually happened. And I was waiting on Annette to clear Bobby because I'm like, you know what went on, you know what actually happened. So why don't you just go ahead and tell Rhoda it's not what you think it is? Her and Harrietta, they get to talking. She got 3 kids, one Charlotte's age. She was married to a detective, but the detective ran off on her with another woman. And she's new in the neighborhood, and she's one of the only black people in the neighborhood. And so she's a few years younger than Annette, and she's trying to make friends with people in the neighborhood. She doesn't really get the hint that Annette's trying to leave to go back over to Rhoda's. She talks about how she burnt up all her husband's clothes and she don't need a man. She also provides child care services, and she prefers older like kids like 8 to 12 because they don't require as much as like babies. And so her and Annette, they make this deal to watch each other's kids whenever it's necessary. Harrietta offers to watch Charlotte, so Annette tells Charlotte, hey, Harrietta's gonna watch you. Charlotte's like, I don't like that lady. She's weird. And then it's like, well, you better start liking her because she gonna be watching you while I'm away. All I'm gonna say is one of these days, Annette is gonna learn to listen to Charlotte. And this ties into an issue that I have with this book. We've already established in the prologue that this Harrietta lady is not a good person to have around children. So, because it's already established, we as the audience already know what type of person she is and what she's about. So her appearance, it falls flat. We're supposed to be getting Harrietta from Annette's point of view. And we're supposed to be trusting her like Annette trusts her, even though Charlotte very clearly says she does not like this lady. And you would think that Annette, having gone through a similar situation where she as a child did not like somebody, but her mother forced her to be around them, you would think she'd be understanding, but no. But that really just speaks to what Annette is going through and what she's worried about, which is becoming like Gussie Mae. That's a recurring worry that she has in the book. She's worried that she'll become like Gussie Mae. And I can see why, because she's making the same mistakes that Gussie Mae is making. But I say all that to say that it's frustrating because we as the audience already know what's wrong. But since we're reading it from Annette's point of view and she doesn't know what's wrong yet, when we're reading it, we get frustrated with her because she seems stupid for not picking up on stuff. Today is still June 17th. It's just later on today. Annette is pissing me off. I feel bad for Charlotte because Annette don't listen. She don't pay attention. She'll never stop to consider what other people be telling her. After Harrietta leaves, Annette goes over to Rhoda's house, but she takes the long way. Drives past Lizzie's apartment where she lives with Peebo. You know, Lizzie lives in the hood, so Annette is like still worrying about Pee-wee possibly still being with Lizzie and the baby and all this other type of stuff. So she get over there to Rhoda's house. You know, when she get over there, Jade is not happy to see her. She's like, what's she doing over here? And Rhoda's like, well, Annette said she saw something with the incident, so maybe she can help us, you know, figure out what's going on. And Jade, she start freaking out. She don't want Annette to talk. She like, you stay there and shut up. Don't say nothing. Rhoda's like, don't talk to her that way. And so basically Annette reveals what she saw, which was Jade coming on to Bobby. And Rhoda asks Jade if this is true. Jade, she just keeps denying it. Rhoda gets more and more fed up. She's like, Jade, I know you're lying, so if you keep lying to me, we're going to have an issue. But Jade keeps on denying it. She faints. So when she comes to, you know, Rhoda asks her again what really happened, and Jade's still denying it. She claims Annette is just making it up because she has a grudge over what happened. Rhoda's not buying it. So Jade, she starts going off on Rhoda. She's like, I hate you. You're the worst mother in the world. You're old. You're ugly. I don't know why any man would want you, especially after you had your breast cut off. That's why I came on to Bobby, because I was just trying to show him what he was missing. Rhoda's hurt, and she tells Jade get out of her house. And Jade's like, I'm not going nowhere until I'm good and ready. Jade runs off to her room. Annette comforts Rhoda. Rhoda's like, I need a drink. So while Annette's getting a drink, Jade comes back, you know, all dressed up like she's finna go out. And she's like, okay, Mom, I need some more medication for my UTI and stuff like that. And Rhoda's like, get it yourself and get out my house. Jade is like, oh, come on, Mom. Don't be like this. It's not that serious. Annette, she's like feeling a little bit bad for Jade because she like misses how sweet Jade used to be. And she's like, oh, if Jade had just apologized to me, I could have looked past it. And I'm like, she did apologize at the end of God Don't Play. But I guess Miss Mary retconned that. After Annette started feeling bad, Jade, of course, goes off on her, calling her fat, ugly, jealous, same old, same old. So Annette don't feel bad no more. While Jade is out, Rhoda packs up all her stuff and puts it on the porch. And so when Jade comes back, Jade is like, Mom, what are you doing? And Rhoda's like, I told you get out my house, so I'm putting you out. You got 24 hours to get your stuff and go. After that, I'm sending whatever's left to Goodwill. So Jade starts going off. She's like, how can you do this to me? I'm your daughter. And she slaps Rhoda. The whole time Jade is doing all this, Annette keeps warning Jade, you don't want to do this. You don't want to mess with her. You don't know her as well as you think you do. And Jade not trying to hear. She keep telling Annette to shut up and stop getting her business. So when Jade slaps her, Rhoda, she grabbed that girl's arm and twisted it so hard she almost broke it. And she slapped Jade so hard that she left her handprint on her face. And so Jade is shocked that Rhoda put her hands on her. She's like, oh my gosh, you put your hands on me? And Rhoda's like, and I'll do it again. And she goes in the house. And Jade starts going off. She's like, I can't believe she did that. I'm going to press charges on her. And Annette's like, how you going to press charges on her when you slapped her first? Jade is like, you need to mind your business, Annette. You always in somebody's business, and watch, one day it's gonna happen to you. Charlotte's not as innocent as you think she is, and I hope it all comes crashing down around you. So Jade's friend that dropped her off at the house comes to help her get her stuff, and Annette goes back in the house and comforts Rhoda. She goes home and she's like, okay, yes, I got me a little bit of time to myself. And so Harrietta calls and she's like, oh, hey, can Charlotte spend the night, you know, because we just enjoyed having her over here so much. And it's like, yeah, sure, she can spend the night. Charlotte calls next. Charlotte's like, Mom, I don't like this lady. I don't want to stay over here. Can I please come home? And that's like, no, you're staying over there. And Charlotte is whispering. And that's like, why are you whispering? And Charlotte's like, because she don't like us using the phone. I had to call you while she went to the bathroom. And then that's like, you staying over there. That's final. I'm the mom, you the child, you do what I say. And Charlotte, she's pleading to come back home, but Annette won't let her. And Charlotte's like, oh, she's coming back. I gotta get off the phone all quick. And so Annette, you know, she finding humor in the situation because she's like, oh, these issues are so trivial compared to what I'm going through. Pee-wee calls and he's like, he wants to come over. And that's like, you got an hour to get over here. If my lights are off when you get over here, don't bother coming in because I've went to bed. After that, Lily Mae comes rushing in. She went out with Frank and they had a good time. They invited Gussie Mae, but Gussie Mae made up some excuse so she didn't have to go. And then when they went out and had a good time without her, now she's pissed that they went out and had a good time without her. And I'm like, Gussie Mae, you don't have to be friends with Lily Mae, but if you stop being bitter, everybody trying to make it work except you. And you've been holding on to this bitterness for 30 plus years. You got the man back and everything. What more do you want? Let it go. So Annette, she fills Lily Mae in on what went on with Rhoda and Jade. Lily Mae thinks Jade is on drugs, but she does feel like Rhoda did a little bit too much putting her out, and Annette doesn't agree with her. She's like, no, I think Rhoda did what she needed to do. And Annette questions whether she did the right thing by telling. And Rhoda says she gonna spin up some story for Otis to explain why everyone is out of the house. And so she doesn't plan on telling Otis the truth. And so Lily Mae, after she says her piece, she goes to bed. And then Pee Wee comes over. He tells Annette that the baby that Lizzie is having is not his. Annette is over here confused. She's like, what do you mean it's not yours? And Pee Wee's like, it's not mine because my sperm count is low. Annette is like, how is that possible when we have Charlotte? And he's like, age and the treatment. And Annette is over here just acting dazed and confused, like she don't understand plain English. And so basically Pee Wee explains to Annette that he can't have any more kids because of his treatment lowering his sperm count. And plus the math with Lizzie's conception date and her due date, it doesn't add up, because by the time she would have conceived, her and Pee Wee were already apart. When he went to confront her, she basically came clean and said that the baby is Peebo's, but she was going to pin it on Pee Wee because Peebo already has 5 kids and he doesn't want the baby. And she figured Pee Wee was a better option as a father, so she was just going to have Pee Wee be the father. And so Annette, she's glad to hear that the baby's not Pee Wee's, but she's still not comfortable with them getting back together yet. And also she's a little sad that he can't have no more kids, because now that explains why she couldn't get pregnant anymore. The next Sunday, Roscoe drops off some clothes for Annette to wash. Annette said this earlier in the book, that he don't really want to marry her for love. He's really just looking for somebody to take care of him. And so Annette has kind of been filling that role. She's dating this other dude named Ron Hawthorne, who works at the water department in the town. So she's just dating around with Roscoe, with Ron, and with Pee Wee. Charlotte, she comes home from the sleepover while her and Lily Mae are making food. And Charlotte's like, Mom, I do not like that lady. She's strange. She's weird. And Annette's like, well, you're going to have to give me some other reasons beside her being strange and weird, because if you can't give me no reasons why you don't like her, you still going over there. And so Charlotte, she goes to her room. Lily Mae starts speaking some sense. And this is why I like Lily Mae. I like Lily Mae because she's boisterous, but she's also not afraid to speak the truth. Lily Mae's like, Annette, how well do you know this lady? And Annette's like, well, I think I know her well enough to trust her with Charlotte. And Lily Mae is like, well, I think you need to get to know this lady a little bit more. And it's like, Charlotte just not used to how strict she is, because I'm not as strict as Harrietta is. And Lily Mae's like, I think you need to get to know this lady a little bit more if you're going to be trusting her with Charlotte. Like, you need to invite her over regularly to get to know her. You need to be popping up over her house when she don't expect it. Annette's listening, but she not listening because she's priding herself on how cautious she's been with Charlotte compared to how cautious Gussie Mae was with her. Because she's like, even though my mama did her best and was as cautious with me, I still was the victim. I still was victimized by Mr. Boatwright. And I'm like, exactly. So you know this. And yet, and still, you, for some reason, will not take Charlotte seriously when she says that she do not like this lady. This lady is strange. And she also says that Harrietta's kids are just very humble. And Lily Mae's like, humble? That's not a good word to describe kids. And she's like, I can't put it no other way. They're just so quiet and well behaved. They don't act like the other kids. They never really around the other kids. They just so humble. The reason why Annette is not listening to Charlotte is because she thinks Charlotte is as spoiled as Jade was, and she don't want a Jade 2.0. Your daughter is telling you she does not like this lady. She says this lady is strange. She says this lady is weird. You yourself have been through this situation with Mr. Boatwright. That's why she keeps pissing me off. I'm like, you don't want to end up like Gussie Mae, but you are pretty much acting exactly how Gussie Mae acted in God Don't Like Ugly, and it's why it pissed me off with her. What I will say is, even though Annette is getting on my nerves, I do find it interesting that she has essentially become Gussie Mae, and we get to see it from Annette's point of view on how, like, even though Gussie Mae did her best and did her best to protect Annette, she still failed in some areas. So it is interesting to get to see it from Annette's point of view with her own daughter, and it does kind of make Gussie Mae more sympathetic. But it is irritating because it's like, you've been through this. You recognized all the signs with P, but now you can't recognize them with Charlotte. When Gussie Mae was in the position, Gussie Mae had a more demanding job. She did not have everything that Annette had. She did not have all the resources, and she did not have as much time as Annette has to spend with Annette, like Annette does with Charlotte. Annette's job, I'm not going to say it's not as demanding as Gussie Mae's job was. The way her job is set up, she essentially works from home at this point. Her employer trusts her so much that she can literally work from home if she wanted to. She just likes to go to the office because she likes going out. Number one, you should be recognizing the signs. Number two, in a better position than Gussie Mae was, you have more resources available to you than Gussie Mae did. With Gussie Mae, you could make the argument that she was not ever home to know something was wrong. And plus, Mr. Boatwright had you so scared to say anything. But Charlotte is not scared to speak up. She's speaking up and you just not believe her. You just not paying attention. She prides herself so much on being so cautious with Charlotte, but she never pays attention to what Charlotte is trying to tell her. I understand that she's trying to be more cautious about what goes on with Charlotte because of what she went through, but the downside of that is that she never pays attention to what Charlotte is trying to tell her. And she never gives Charlotte time to express what's going on because she's always shutting her down, always telling her to be quiet, always telling her to stay in a child's place. And it makes me sad for Charlotte because Charlotte is really real life sitting here trying to tell Annette that something's wrong with this lady, and Annette will not believe her. Too busy focused on what she got going on in her life, she's not paying attention to what's going on with her child. Today is June 18th. It's almost 3 in the morning. This is truly the worst book in the series. This is just drama for the sake of drama. The storylines are just being dragged out. Like, this is the last book in the series. We're supposed to be resolving everything in the book, but it just feels like it's just dragging for no reason. Annette decides to follow Lily Mae's advice, and she invites Harrietta over for dinner. Charlotte is not happy about this. Harrietta comes over with the girls. It's 3 girls, one who's 12, one who's 10, and one who's 9. But Annette notices that the girls do not talk all that much, and that every time Annette tries to speak to them, they always look at Harrietta for permission to speak first. And like, Harrietta will not let them like go play with Charlotte. Like, they have to sit in the living room where Harrietta can see. And she claims it's because the last time she let her girls like go hang out with somebody else's kids, they broke something in that person's house. So now they just sit there where she can see them. They tend to tell lies when she's not around. It's an uncomfortable dinner. And after dinner, Harrietta finally allows the girls to go up to Charlotte's room and like hang out. And she talks with Harrietta and she tells her that Charlotte doesn't like her. And she questions why. And Harrietta's like, oh, well, maybe she's just, not used to me. Maybe she just needs some time to adjust to me. She's like, okay, but if something's wrong with my daughter, I'm going to look into it. And Harrietta, she gets all like stiffened, starts sweating profusely. And Harrietta's like, I would never abuse your daughter, Annette. Annette, she's like, I know, I'm not accusing you of nothing. Just want us to have an understanding. And so after they have that conversation, Annette goes and talks to Charlotte and the girls. They do not like Harrietta because she's very strict and she does not allow them to do much. And they prefer their dad. And so Annette suspects that the reason that the girls don't like her is because of the divorce that Harrietta and her husband had. So she sympathizes with Harrietta. So when she goes back downstairs, Lily Mae is back. They all sit down, get to talking, have a few drinks, except for Harrietta because she don't drink. And they basically just talk about like men and their life experiences and stuff like that. And Harrietta tells Annette that it's sad for them because as black women, it's becoming more and more common for them to grow old alone. And Annette feels like saddened by her point of view. Harrietta's husband left her in a similar way that Pee Wee left Annette. They slept together a few hours before he left her, and then she came home while he was supposed to be at work. He was there sleeping with another girl, and then he just up and left her with that girl. So they could talk about their husbands. Lily Mae says she misses her husband and plans on going back to him. And so then her birthday's the next week. And she wakes up to Gussie Mae fussing at her over the phone, talking about some girl, you don't get any younger, da-da-da-this, da-da-da-da, you need to get stuff straight with Pee Wee. Gussie Mae being Gussie Mae. And Pee Wee sends her flowers for her birthday, but Annette has been avoiding because she doesn't want to like sleep with him and stuff like that, because she's still kind of reeling from the situation with Lizzie. Even though it's not Pee Wee's baby, she's still reeling from the possibility that it could have been. And so she spends her birthday with Roscoe and Ron. And Ron, he's going through a divorce. And he's keeping Annette like as a secret while he's going through the divorce. And Annette doesn't mind because she's really only using him to sleep with anyway. She's not really seeking a real relationship with him. About a week later, Gussie Mae calls again. Annette notices that Gussie Mae not sounding too good. So she's like, what's wrong? And Gussie Mae like, I'm fine, girl. And Annette decides she's going to go over there and check on her mama. Gussie Mae up and about, making food, talking about some Frank. We going to go to bingo tonight, da-da-da-this, da-da-da-that, thinking it's Frank that walks in the door. But it's Annette. And Annette's like, you supposed to be sick. And Gussie Mae like, I ain't sick. I told you I was doing all right. Annette goes back home, and Gussie Mae does not show up for the birthday celebration because she doesn't want to be around Lily Mae. After they celebrate, Annette goes out with Rhoda. Rhoda hasn't heard from Jade since the incident, and so they hang out for a little bit, and then Annette goes back home, and she finds Harrietta watching Charlotte because Lily Mae went out with Frank. And so then after her birthday, Annette can't get in touch with Rhoda over the phone, so she goes over to the house, and Rhoda says she hasn't been taking no calls. Otis is glad that Jade has moved out because he's been trying to get her to move out for years. And Bobby is back in the house again. Otis is none the wiser. I wonder if he's ever going to find out before this book ends. I hope he do. We learn that Jade is living with this guy named Hollywood, and she is working at a strip club as a stripper. And Rhoda is like, I cannot believe that my daughter has sunk so low to become a stripper. And we also find out that Bobby did not know that the baby that Rhoda had with him was his baby. So Annette is the only person who knows. Bobby himself doesn't even know that he had a baby. And Annette, after like all of this, after finding out that Lizzie's baby is not Pee Wee's, she's feeling back to her old self again. So she decides to go on a date with Ron. And so when she calls Ron, she talks about their last date. Ron was like, "Oh, that was you that was there?" He didn't even realize that the person he had been spending time with was Annette. She feels like running around with Ron and Roscoe and Pee Wee. It makes her feel promiscuous, and it makes her feel like a prostitute all over again. So she decides not to go on a date with Ron after all. She ends up going out with him anyways the next weekend. And Lily Mae, of course, is missing her husband, but she encourages Annette to go have her fun while she can. And Annette decides to take Lily Mae's advice and live life like it's her last, because she never knows what's gonna happen. And the reason why she decides this is because a whole bunch of celebrities keep dying, but she's not sleeping with Pee Wee because things between them are awkward. She's dodging Roscoe because he keeps asking her to like do like iron his clothes and wash his clothes and clean his house and stuff like that, but he's not sleeping with her because of course he doesn't want to. And then all of the men stop contacting her because after she put her foot down with Roscoe, he stopped contacting her. Ron is hard to get in touch with, and she's staying away from Pee Wee for obvious reasons. And Rhoda is like avoiding her too because of the whole what went down with Jade. So she really don't have nobody to talk to except Lily Mae. But even Lily Mae is barely available because she's always hanging out with Frank, and she don't feel like talking to Gussie Mae and Scary Mary. So Annette feels lonely, and so Annette believes that her and Pee Wee will end up getting back together. She just doesn't know when. But one day, Ron ends up calling Annette to like go to a motel, but it's bad weather out. So while Annette is on her way there, she has to stop and get some gas. And she runs into Lizelle and Wyrita, and they basically doing what they do, being nosy, trying to get, the gossip from her, but she not telling them nothing. And so when she leaves, she accidentally ends up having to go past the gas station again because she took a wrong turn. And so Lizelle and Wyrita get behind her and goes to like the convenience store, and she's getting some contraceptives while she's in there. And while she's getting them, Lizelle and Wyrita spot her, and they're like, "Okay, girl, we see you get it with whoever you getting it with." And so Annette's embarrassed, and then she goes back to meet with Ron, but there's an accident near the motel, so she got to go all out the way to get to him. So when she finally gets to him, he's like, "What took you so long?" Being pissy and stuff like that. They get in the room, they sleep together, and then Ron gets a phone call and he runs off. And Annette, she feels cheap because she's like, we wasn't even together that long, really down about herself. And so Pee Wee calls and invites her to dinner. And because she says that her guard is down, she accepts. So it's gonna be her, Pee Wee, and Charlotte going to dinner, and she accepts. So the next day, while she's getting ready to go to this dinner, Scary Mary drops by and tells her, "Oh girl, now that Lizzie's baby is not Pee Wee's, you need to snatch him back up." Pee Wee shows up early because he wanted to like hang out at the house first before they went to dinner. But Annette's like, "Oh no, we need to like leave early, right?" And Pee Wee's like, "No, we don't." But he slowly catches on to what Annette's trying to do, and he's like, "Oh yes, we do. I just remembered." So they go out and they go to the mall first to like kill time before the reservation. And while they're there, they run into Ron, who is with his wife and four of his seven kids. Now, the wife's name is Nola, and earlier in the book, Ron told Annette that he could not see her because his cousin, Nola, and her kids were coming from Detroit to visit. But it turns out that Nola and these kids are Ron's wife and his kids, and she has another kid, baby number 7, on the way. They both like keeping a low profile, and Nola talks about how she missed Ron so much and she's so glad that she doesn't have to worry about him going to be with another woman. And Annette's like, mm-hmm. Now Annette Once she sees this, she decides that her and Ron are done. When they get to the restaurant, Annette goes straight to the bar and gets her 2 glasses of wine. And then she goes sit down with Pee Wee, and she gets all emotional because it's their first family outing. And Charlotte, like, what's the matter? And she's like, it's just a lot going on right now. Pee Wee gets emotional too. And then after the dinner, they are on the way home, but it's bad weather. And so Pee Wee's like, oh, why don't y'all just spend the night at my house? And that's like, I'm not doing that. And the reason why she don't want to go to his house is because that's where he and Lizzie were staying. So of course she don't want to go over there. Pee Wee has to fight through the bad weather to get her and Charlotte home. About an hour later, Gussie Mae and Lily Mae come in the house, all hand in hand, all chummy. Lily Mae and Gussie Mae have become friends because Gussie Mae was in a bind at the restaurant and Lily Mae stepped in to cook up all the food and basically helped Gussie Mae out. So now Gussie Mae loves her, got her calling her my dear and everything. And Annette's like, oh wow, okay. And she even got Lily Mae filling in indefinitely at her restaurant for her cooks who couldn't help her out during the fiasco at her restaurant. Gussie Mae tells Annette, oh, when school starts back up, send Charlotte by the house, how she usually does after school, so we can watch her. And Annette's like, oh, I got this new lady watching her now. And Charlotte comes in the room like, I don't like that lady, Mom. She creeps me out. And she's like, if you can't tell me what she did to you to dislike you, and Charlotte's like, she already did something. And Annette's like, what is it? Because if it's not good enough, you still going over there. And Annette's still not listening to what Charlotte has to say. Gussie Mae is like, I've never seen Charlotte act like this. Pay more attention to this lady just in case. And so when Gussie Mae says that, all of a sudden Annette's like, oh wait, you know what? Maybe my mom is right. Charlotte hasn't really ever acted like this. So maybe something is the matter. It took Gussie Mae telling Annette because Gussie Mae obviously is speaking from experience. She even says in previous books that she regrets not having been more attentive to what was going on with Annette. So you would think that Annette, having already been through this with Gussie Mae, would be more attentive to Charlotte, but she's not. And it takes Gussie Mae speaking from personal experience to get Annette to finally consider that Charlotte's not just acting like a brat for no reason and something might seriously be wrong. And then the book itself is just pissing me off. The prologue is really what hurts this book, and it really is what hurts Annette's character. Because we, the audience, know what the issue is. We sitting up here annoyed with Annette because it's like, how can she not see what we not seeing? And it's because we as the audience already know what the problem is. When you leave God Ain't Through Yet and go into this book, you know that this book is primarily going to be about Annette and Pee Wee trying to pick up the pieces and what they're going to do about their marriage. You know that's what it's going to be about going into this book. So when we get that prologue and it tells us about Harrietta, and then you read the book and you're looking at Annette crazy, it gets on your nerves. Because if we didn't have this prologue, then we could truly see it from Annette's point of view. And we could truly be like, okay, well, is Charlotte doing too much, or is something really wrong? But because we have that prologue, we don't even get to do that because we are, as the audience, already knows what's wrong. And it hurts Annette's character because in order for this book to work, Annette has to be naive. But we, as readers of the series, already know that Annette can pick up on when something is wrong in the sense of when a child is being abused, because we saw her do it with P, and God still don't like ugly, and she tried to do something about it. Even if Annette does not recognize the signs, she should know her daughter's character. It's like the same situation with Gussie Mae and Annette, but now it's Annette and Charlotte, and Annette has become Gussie Mae. And just like I was pissed off with Gussie Mae, I'm pissed off with Annette. Charlotte's telling you she do not like this lady. She tells you that this lady creeps her out. She has used those exact words. That lady is creepy. And Charlotte even says this lady has already done something to make Charlotte dislike her. Even if you think that Charlotte is just being a brat, Annette, you know your daughter's character. You yourself said your daughter likes everybody. You know your daughter is sociable because in the last book you was always talking about how she always want to go over somebody's house and she never want to be at home. Her own children don't like her. Your daughter does not like her. Gussie Mae, when she goes over the house, she's like, oh, just send Charlotte by her house when school starts back up like she's been doing, which means your parents are available to watch her, and yet you're sending her over to this lady you barely know over your own parents, where you know that your parents are going to take care of your child. You know she's safe with your parents. This is what I mean by the storylines feel forced and dragged out, and it's drama just for the sake of drama, because the story doesn't even make sense. Annette's actions don't make sense, because it's like, why not leave your daughter with your parents that you know you can trust over this lady you just met? But her whole reasoning for doing all this is because she doesn't want Charlotte to fall in with the bad crowd like she did last year. And I'm like, what bad crowd did Charlotte fall in with? First of all, she's 12 years old. Let's start there. She's 12, and she's hanging out with the kids in the neighborhood that are around her age. Now, granted, some of them kids was doing stuff that they didn't have no business doing, but when you confronted Charlotte, you discovered that the bad influences were not the other kids in the neighborhood, but was your husband, yourself, and his friends, and the people you had around your daughter. It hasn't even been the kids her age. But yet you sitting up here talking about, so I'm trying to keep her from falling in with the bad crowd. But the bad crowd in the story was you, your husband, and his friends. What also is irritating is we know that Annette is not going to believe Charlotte ever until the reveal. The prologue shows us that when she finally finds out, she's shocked. We as the audience already know that Annette is never going to believe Charlotte until she learns for herself what the issue is. Say the prologue ruins this book because we're just sitting here waiting for the moment when Annette finally finds out. And while we waiting on it, which is probably not going to be till towards the end of the book, it's irritating because she getting on our nerves when it comes to this. If we didn't have that prologue and we was experiencing it with Annette, we could see it from her point of view, and we could be like, okay, we understand why Annette is acting this way. We understand anyway because of what she's been through in the first book. The book has this as a side plot to the main plot of Annette and Pee Wee and their marriage, but the prologue makes it seem like that's gonna be the main plot, and so it's like that's what we the audience are interested in. But the main plot is Annette and Pee Wee. And that's why I say the prologue, once again, hurts this book. Because if we didn't have that prologue, Annette and Pee Wee being this main storyline would not be as irritating. Because going into this book, coming off of God Ain't Through Yet, we already know they're going to be the main storyline. Because that's what it's set up as in the last book. Number one. And number two, we wouldn't know the twist about Harrietta. And so we could see it from Annette's point of view. We could sympathize with her. Even with if we did have this prologue, if Annette was coming from the perspective of, oh, my daughter is telling me all these things, but she don't want to believe it, that it could be true, then we could even still sympathize with Annette even with having this prologue. Because then it would be like, oh, she just doesn't want to believe that it's true, because she doesn't want to believe that she's failed her daughter in the same way that her mother failed her. Then we could at least sympathize with Annette a little bit more, because then we'd understand that she's doing this as a trauma response. But her actions in this book don't make sense, because that's not the perspective that she's coming from. She's getting on my nerves. So today is still June 18th. I am in the home stretch of this book. This has been a most interesting experience. Now, whether it was a good experience still remains to be seen. She still got time to try and save it, but I don't see that happening. Where we pick up is Annette decides to not let Harrietta watch Charlotte anymore. And so she says this to Harrietta, and she's like, but we can still be friends. It's no beef or nothing like that. My daughter's just not comfortable around you. It's less of a hassle to just have somebody else watch her than to be trying to fight and get her to like you. So then after she talks with Harrietta, she gets on the phone to call Rhoda, but Otis picks up. So she talks with Otis, and Otis tells her that, basically everything happens for a reason. And then she gets on the phone with Rhoda. Rhoda is depressed. And so she comes up with this plan to go visit Jade at the strip club, because she's like, that's the only way I'm going to get to be able to talk to her. Like the next weekend, there's these tent revivals that be coming to the city every now and again. And Annette sends Charlotte to somebody else's house, and she tells her that she doesn't have to go to Harrietta's anymore. Charlotte tells Annette that she could possibly prove that Harrietta is abusive, but she don't have no definite proof. So Annette tells her, oh, you can't be making claims like that if you don't have no definite proof. And so Annette thinks that Charlotte might be onto something with Harrietta being off, because she notices that animals don't like Harrietta, and she also notices that Harrietta's into doing witchcraft and stuff like that. And she's like, oh no, I don't do that. And Harrietta's like, I don't do it either, but I just let some people around me do it to appease them and stuff like that. And I'm like, creepy lady. Annette tells everybody that they are going to this tent revival, but really she and Rhoda are going to the strip club. So they get over to that strip club, and Jade comes out and performs under the name Juicy J. And that made me laugh a little bit, I'm not gonna lie. She get out there, she performing, taking off all her clothes. Rhoda and Annette are disgusted. Rhoda goes up there to try and tell her to like get off the stage. What are you doing? But Jade not paying no mind, and security puts Rhoda back in her seat, and they tell her if she causes any more trouble, they're gonna throw her out. And so after Jade gets done performing, Rhoda gets one of the waitresses to tell her where the dressing room is, and they go in there to talk to Jade. Jade is bragging about how much money she makes, and then when she sees Rhoda, she's like, "What are you doing here?" Rhoda tries to get Jade to like leave. She's like, "You can come back home. We can move on from this. You don't have to do this." And Jade's like, "I'm grown. I'll do what I want." And she goes and gets security and has Rhoda and Annette thrown out the club. And so Annette tells her, "You just need to give Jade time to come around." Then they get a call from Scary Mary that Jade is willing to talk to Rhoda. So Rhoda gets super excited, and she decides to go out there alone because that's what Jade wants. So while Rhoda goes off to talk to her alone, Annette goes home, and everybody's over her house talking, having a good old time. And basically, word has gone around town that Rhoda and Annette were at the strip club and they caused a ruckus. So Pee Wee is pissed that they didn't take him and Otis with them as backup in case something went down. And Annette's like, "Y'all are about old as I don't know what. What was y'all gonna do?" Frank is mad she didn't take him as backup, and Gussie Mae's like, "Frank, you about old as dirt. What was you gonna do?" Gussie Mae and Scary Mary mad that they didn't get taken, and it's the same thing. Y'all about old as dirt. What was y'all finna do? Pee Wee and Annette, they go to the store, and Annette runs into Lizzie. Lizzie looks miserable, and Annette kind of feels sorry for her a little bit because she's like, "Dang, you really just ruined your whole life, and now look at you." And then they get what they need to get, and then they go back home. Rhoda comes in pissed off because she told Jade, "Oh, you can come home if you agree to my conditions," which was like, get a better job and be a responsible adult. And Jade was like, "I'll come home if you fund my lifestyle and allow me to do me, no questions asked." And Rhoda's like, "I'm not doing that." They not on good terms. And so Annette takes her home, and while they're over there, they see this news story about this boy who robbed a convenience store, and his mom turned him in. And so Rhoda's like, "I got it. I'ma send Jade to jail." And Annette's like, "What are you talking about?" She's like, "Obviously sending Jade to jail is the only way I'm gonna be able to protect my daughter and get her out of the lifestyle that she's living." Has concocted up this scheme to plant drugs on Jade when they go down to Jamaica, because they're going down to Jamaica for like a funeral. And so when they come back home, she's going to plant drugs on Jade and get Jade arrested at the airport. I'm like, only Rhoda would come up with something like this. And Annette's like, "Rhoda, don't you think that's a bit too much? Like, there's got to be another way to get through to Jade." And Rhoda's like, "I've tried everything else. This is the only way I can think of. That's what I'm doing." And Annette, she's hoping that Rhoda doesn't go through with it, and she also hopes that she never has to get to this point with Charlotte. I think like that Sunday, they end up going to the tent revival for real, because the Reverend, he's going around preaching in all these different cities, but he goes to Richmond a lot because that's where he's from. And while they're getting ready to go down there and go inside, all of the strippers and the bouncers show up, because what's been going on is that the church folk have been protesting the strip club and like telling everybody, "You can come to the church and get saved, and you don't have to live like this." So all the strippers and the bouncers come to the church as revenge. They half naked, and they start playing, like stripper music, and they start dancing. And so the Reverend, he tells them, "Oh, y'all, we done called the police. Y'all need to go on somewhere." Jade is the ringleader, so she's like, "Well, y'all said we could come down here for church. We down here." And they start being disrespectful. She starts dancing on the Reverend, and that sets Scary Mary off. Scary Mary goes over there, and she's like, "Jade, I've been in the game since before you was born. You think you know something? You don't know what I know." And she basically puts some fear into Jade and all the strippers and all the bouncers and runs them off. Rhoda is beyond embarrassed. And so they go into the revival, and the preacher preaches like this heavy sermon targeted at the strippers and the strip club and stuff like that. Everybody, yeah, yeah, amen. And I'm like, you preaching this sermon, but the people who needed to hear it the most are not there because y'all ran them off. That kind of just irritated me because, y'all know I'm a Christian. And it's like, this was the perfect opportunity for y'all to get them in there, get them saved. It's like this one pastor, I heard him talking about how, like, a lot of churches, they operate like gangs. Like, whenever somebody new comes in there, all of the like regular members are like, "Oh, what you doing in my church? Why you here?" Looking at them crazy like they don't belong there. And everybody likes to say that the church is a hospital and the people in there need help and healing. If the church is a hospital and the people who come there need help and need deliverance and need healing, why would y'all run them off? The whole point of y'all protesting is because y'all trying to get them saved. It might not have been the way that y'all wanted them to come, but yet they're there. All y'all have to do is get them inside to hear the word and minister to them, but y'all chase them off instead. Rhoda is embarrassed, and she decides this is the confirmation that she needs to go through her plan. Annette goes home. She gets relaxed for the night. She's like, I got me a night to myself. Here comes Pee Wee. He wanna, talk to her, drop some money off for Charlotte. And she's glad to see him, and she's hoping that one day they will be together again. But what's on her mind most is Rhoda's plan. And so she doesn't want to say too much because she doesn't know what Rhoda has told Pee Wee. So she goes and calls Rhoda real quick to see what she told Pee Wee, and she's like, I ain't told Pee Wee nothing, so you don't say nothing. And Rhoda tells her to go ahead and, sleep with Pee Wee. Annette goes back out there, they talk for a little bit, and then they sleep together. The next day at breakfast, Annette asks Charlotte would she like to go over Harrietta's again, and Charlotte's like, nope. Instead, she like, oh, can I go to the Valentine's Day dance at my school instead? And Annette is glad that Charlotte is focusing on stuff that's like appropriate for her age. But Charlotte also says that, she's not really gonna give no opinion on Harrietta no more because grown folks always stick together. They don't ever listen to kids. Her mama is not listening to her. Lily Mae at least is like giving her some level of attention, and it's somewhat trying to hear what she's trying to say, but she's more neutral in the situation, so it makes sense why Charlotte like, y'all just gonna stick together anyways. And so the relationship between Annette and Harrietta has become strange. Like, she still goes over and visit, but Harrietta don't come visit her. And then one day Harrietta calls her frantic because Vivian is missing. Vivian is her oldest daughter. Charlotte ended up not going to the dance because Harrietta was gonna chaperone. And so when Charlotte didn't go, Vivian didn't go. She goes and asks Charlotte, oh, have you seen Vivian? Because Vivian didn't go to the dance, and her mama said she done disappeared from the house. And Charlotte like, oh no, I ain't seen her. I ain't even know she didn't go to the dance. Annette's like, okay. She tells Harrietta, oh, Vivian's not here. If you can't find her within the next hour, I think you should call the police. So they get off the phone, and Charlotte comes down to get breakfast, and she gets like more than she normally eats. So Annette gets suspicious, and she follows Charlotte back up to her room. Charlotte's locked the door, but Annette got a key. First of all, the fact that Charlotte has a lock on her door. I don't even have a lock on my door, and I'm grown. So the fact that Charlotte has a lock on her door and Annette has to go get a key, I'm like, what kind of black family is this? So Annette gets the key and unlocks the door. She catches Vivian in there. She returns Vivian to Harrietta. Harrietta's pissed off. Annette is super pissed off. She goes off on Charlotte. Charlotte's like, I was just trying to help her because she said she was going to run away somewhere else. And so I was just trying to help her out. And Annette's like, oh, you've done enough helping, young lady. You are never allowed to see Vivian again. And Annette and Harrietta stop speaking. A few days later, Rhoda goes down to Jamaica. Annette tries to talk her out of her plan one last time, but Rhoda is set on doing it. And while Annette was out, she ran into Warita, and Warita tells her Lizzie had the baby and it looks like Pee Wee. Pee Wee comes over, things are awkward between them. Pee Wee asks her, do she got another man coming over because she being weird? And Annette's like, that's none of your business. And then they finally get on the subject of the baby. Pee Wee gets annoyed because he's tired of talking about that darn baby. Pee Wee gets up like he finna leave, and Annette's like, oh no, you don't gotta leave. So then they decide to stop talking about the baby, and Pee Wee tells Annette that she's still looking good. They start flirting a little bit. That's where I left off. So I'm in the home stretch of this book. I'm hoping for a satisfying conclusion, but we'll see. So Pee Wee calls and tells Annette about the funeral. Jade and her cousins, they acted a fool. They was stealing all of the stuff out the house before Papa even was in the grave. Like, they did too much at the funeral. Everybody fighting over the inheritance. His wife is not even dead, but they treating her like she is. Pee Wee calls Annette to be like, we gotta be like ready to comfort Rhoda and Otis when they come back home. Then he tells Annette that he took Lizzie to the hospital to have her baby. She had a boy, and he took her because her parents didn't know who else to call. And Annette is pissed off about this. She's like, why would you take her to the hospital knowing what's going on? And Pee Wee's like, I'm gonna get a DNA test for the baby. Newsflash, we never find out if the baby's Pee Wee's or not. We're just left to assume that his word is bond. We, the audience, never find out the results. It's never addressed again after this. And the baby was born on his mama's birthday, and Annette, after learning all this, she has a panic attack. Pee Wee's like, let me speak to Charlotte. I ain't spoke to her in a while. So Annette goes to get Charlotte, right? Charlotte's not in her room. So she goes to Lily Mae, who's on the phone with her husband, because her husband trying to get her to come back home. She's like, Lily Mae, is Charlotte in here with you? Lily Mae like, no girl, I thought she was in her room. Charlotte has run away. She decided that because Annette was not listening to her, was not trying to hear what she had to say, she decided to run away. So Annette starts freaking out. She tells Pee Wee, oh my gosh, Charlotte's run away. She calls 911. The people are not helpful at all. So she gets her stuff on, and she and Lily Mae and Pee Wee head down to the police station. They get to the police station, same thing. They act like they can't be bothered. They have her fill out a report and say, come back in 2 days if the girl ain't shown up. Runaways are very common. They usually tend to come back. She ain't the first child to run away. She ain't gonna be the last. That's what they tell her. So they decide to take it into their own hands to find Charlotte. They printing flyers, they checking around with her friends, see if she's maybe at her friend's house, and they can't find her. And so then when they get back home, Rhoda calls. She's back in town, and she went through her plan. Jade is in jail. She didn't speak to Rhoda at all during the funeral, and she even left the funeral early to go out partying. She couldn't get in her suitcases because Jade locked them. So she put it on her boogie board and, notified the people at the airport, and Jade got took into jail. Annette comforts her a little bit and tells her about Charlotte and everything that's going on, and Rhoda's like, oh my gosh. And so she's like, I'm gonna come over, but Annette's like, no, don't worry about it. You got a lot going on too. So after they get off the phone, Lily Mae come running out like, oh my gosh, y'all turn on the news. You're not gonna believe it. And Annette's like, oh, I already know about it. Jay got arrested because she was smuggling drugs because they've been running that story on the news. Lily Mae's like, that's not what I'm talking about. And so she turned on the news. They talk about Harrietta being caught molesting them children and videotaping it. Goodsey Mae, Frank, Scary Mary, Rhoda, Otis, they all come over to the house. They all is in shock. They're like, how could we have missed this? This is what Charlotte was trying to tell us. How could we have missed this? How could we not have known what was going on? Because y'all wouldn't stop to listen to Charlotte. Because y'all wouldn't pay attention to her. And Annette is especially distraught because she's like, I'm a survivor of abuse, so how did I not even notice the signs of my daughter? Because you weren't paying attention. She's worried that Charlotte's going to get put in foster care when she's found, because that's what happened to Harrietta's daughters. They got put in foster care. And the reports on what Harrietta did to the kids, it just gets worse and worse. While they sitting up worrying, Lizelle calls and she's like, Annette, I just saw your daughter over on Lyman Street. And basically she's dressed up like a prostitute. You would think that Annette, getting this news from Lizelle that I just saw your daughter over here with this pimp Hollywood, you would think that they would get in the car, drive over there, and go get Charlotte, right? That's not what they do. Annette decides she got to pull a Rhoda. She's like, I finally understand why Rhoda did what she had to do, and now I got to do that with my 13-year-old daughter who ran away from home and is being pimped out by an adult male pimp. So she decides she got to get on the phone and call the police on Hollywood and Charlotte. But Scary Mary does it for her as a grudge because she's like, Hollywood been moving in on her territory. So she decides to call the police instead and have Hollywood arrested and Charlotte taken to juvie. And then she reveals she also peed on Boatwright's grave because she doesn't tolerate children being abused. So Charlotte was recovered and they've got her in juvie. She's been in there for a week when Pee-wee and Annette go visit her. And Charlotte been in there singing like a canary. She has told it all to anybody who would listen. So when Pee-wee and Annette finally get in there and they hug and kiss her and tell her they're so glad she's okay, they ask her, why did you run away? And she basically explains the first time she went over Harrietta's house, Harrietta had her holding the camera videotaping the abuse. And that's why Charlotte kept saying, this lady is weird, this lady is weird. But she said that Harrietta threatened to shoot all of them if she told. That's why she was trying to drop hints. Decided if her parents was not going to listen to her, she going to have to do it herself. Took some of the photos that she was forced to take, turned them in to the reporter anonymously. And after 2 weeks, when nothing happened, she decided to run away because she felt like no adult was going to believe her and she felt like she was in danger. So that's why she ran away. And then Hollywood, the pimp, found her and he took her home with him, talking about he gonna take care of her. And basically he forced her into prostitution, but she didn't actually do any prostituting because he was gonna test her out first. The police got a hold of him, thank the Lord. She's like, I didn't have to do anything. He gave me some weed, that was it. But she's like, I didn't have to do anything, and Harrietta didn't get me to do anything because I refused, and I told her I would tell if she did. And she threatened me and told me eventually she was gonna get me to do something. They did like kiss on her and touch her in inappropriate places. She was molested, but not to the extent that Annette was molested. But she doesn't consider herself to be molested because she's like, oh, all they did was just kiss me and touch me on my chest area. And after Annette hears all this, she can't take it no more. She feels sick, and Pee-wee's like, oh, Charlotte, look what you did to your mother. And Charlotte's like, am I in trouble? And they're like, no, you're not in trouble, but you're in here because you ran away. And so we need you to understand the ramifications of what happens when you run away, because it's a crime. And I'm like, your daughter just told you she ran away because she was scared because no adult was listening to her. And y'all are sitting up here blaming her for Annette rightfully acting frantic and all over the place, as she should be, but y'all are putting all the blame on her when she was scared. So they leave Charlotte in there for 2 weeks. Goodsey Mae come over, she comforting Annette. Annette basically explains that they decided to leave Charlotte in there for 2 weeks to, teach her a lesson, get her on the straight and narrow. And Lily Mae is like, well, she only did it because the people she thought were going to protect her didn't. And Annette is like, oh yeah, but we're doing this because we want her to understand that even if the devil himself is threatening her, she can still come to us. And Lily Mae is like, the devil was threatening her and y'all wasn't listening. And I'm like, Lily Mae, the only person in this book with some darn sense. And so there won't be any trials because Harriet pled no contest and Hollywood pled guilty. And Annette checks on Rhoda. Jade might possibly get off because of an unconnected smuggling ring that has been planting drugs in people's luggages without them knowing. So she might claim that's what happened to her and get off. And Rhoda hasn't seen her yet, and she's like, I'm just going to leave it in God's hands. Pee-wee is moving back in because Annette's like, it's time for him to come home, so he's coming home. Lily Mae's preparing to go home. And then while they're talking, Jade calls and has Rhoda come down there to visit her. Rhoda's all excited, but Annette is skeptical, and she's like, Rhoda, I know you're excited, but don't let your guard down around Jade, because even though she may seem like she's changed, she might not. And Rhoda's like, I understand. And Annette is like, oh, we made it through all this craziness this year because we supported each other. So then we jump forward to 2012. Charlotte is married. She has a baby at 26. It's a boy. She's married to this guy named Anthony, and they're both lawyers. Gussie Mae, Frank, and Scary Mary all died. Scary Mary died in a car accident. Rhoda and Bobby have stopped sleeping together. She and Otis have renewed their vows. Pee-wee and Annette are back together. They are married again. Jade got off for the drugs, but she got put back in jail because she murdered a lover and his girlfriend. So she's in jail for a long time, and she'll never be able to have kids. So Rhoda's never going to get her dream of being a grandmother. And she almost got Otis fired from his job because she was dealing drugs out of his job because she was working there as a receptionist. And so the book ends with Annette naming the baby Jerry after Pee-wee. And it ends with Rhoda saying, oh, well, can we not call this baby Pee-wee too? Can we call it something else? And everybody laughs, and that's how the book ends. This was the worst book in the series. Everybody pissed me off except Charlotte and Lily Mae. Y'all really sat up in y'all daughter's face and said, you're a hero for what you did. But y'all put her in juvie for 2 weeks because she ran away. But she only ran away because she was scared. Y'all got this girl sitting in juvie for what? She literally explained to y'all why she did what she did, and y'all acting like she just did this terrible thing. This is on y'all, and this is what pisses me off with these last 2 books in particular. Because Annette and Pee-wee will sit up here and say, oh, Charlotte is a handful. Charlotte misbehaved. She do this and do that. But we, the audience, don't ever see Charlotte doing anything worth the punishments that she receives. What did she do that was so terrible to warrant this? That was not a direct result of you two failing as parents. This whole book pissed me off, and all I can say is poor Charlotte. Annette wants the audience to be so proud of her as a parent, but I can't be proud of you, Annette. You don't do right. You have not done right by your daughter, and that's why you sitting up here dazed and confused now when Charlotte says you barely know her, because you don't pay attention to your daughter. You are Gussie Mae all over again. And if that was the point, Miss Mary got that point across very well. Just like I was frustrated with Gussie Mae, I'm frustrated with Annette. That's like one of her biggest concerns about the book, but there's never no aha moment where she realizes I'm like my mother. Even the scene where it should have happened, because there was setup for it, it didn't pay off. This whole book just was the worst book in the series, and this is such a disappointing end to the series. And it didn't do a good job of wrapping up nothing. That epilogue, So I finished God Don't Make No Mistakes, and it was truly the worst book in the series. Can we talk about the cover? So it's the worst book in the series and the worst cover in the series because the cover does not match the other covers. Look at this cover compared to the God Don't Like Ugly cover. The styles don't match. I don't hate the cover itself because it does give that feeling of like, this is the last book. Everything's gonna be all right after this. Like, we just going into the rest of our lives. It does not match with the rest of the series, and that irks me. Now, earlier in the video, I said that God Still Don't Like Ugly was the worst in the series, and the reason I said that is because God Still Don't Like Ugly, even though it has a strong storyline, it did their rehashing mess. After we got through the rehash, it felt like getting to the point in the story where we were was like a summarization of what was going on. So I was like, even though it has a strong storyline, this is the worst book in the series until I got to God Don't Make No Mistakes. Like I said, the prologue really just hurt the book a lot. And if we didn't have it, I feel like it would have probably done a little bit better. I gave it a very generous 3. It should have got a 2. But I have read other books this year that have been worse than this book, and I gave them 3s. And so it wouldn't be right for me to give this book a 2, and I gave those books 3s, and they're worse than this book. So I'm giving this book a very generous 3. That's not to say that Miss Mary cannot write, can't tell a story, because we know she can. You can tell that she had more books planned, and then somewhere during the writing of this book, like probably right after she finished, they told her, oh, this is going to be the last one. So she went and slapped that epilogue on, because the way the book ends right before the epilogue makes it clear that there's probably more stories to come. And then when you get to that epilogue, it's like it just feels tacked on to the book. This was a disappointing conclusion to the series, but I did, for the most part, enjoy the series. It doesn't take away from the enjoyment I had for the first book. Thank you for tuning into this video. If you liked it, give it a like, a comment. If you like me, if you like my personality, if you like the way I told this story, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. And if you really liked me, If you really like me, feel free to go buy my books, okay? Because I do write books too. I don't just read them. I'm pretty sure you can tell by the way I tell these stories that I know what makes a good book and doesn't make a good book. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.